Good evening once again. It's Monday night. It's 8 p.m. here in Ireland and in the UK. It's the Monday Review Show. And this is where Keith and I discuss all things refereeing. And I must say at the outset, and I probably need to keep repeating this, we're not here to hammer or nail or overly criticize referees. We're talking about refereeing decisions, being as we were both there. And we know exactly what it is like. We go out on Facebook, we go out on YouTube. Please send in your comments and your questions if you wish. There's a little space at the bottom of right-hand side of your screen where you can send in your comments and make comments. But at all times, please be respectful of the show and especially of my guest, Keith Hackett. Welcome again, Keith. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a bank holiday here in Ireland and in the UK, so I really do appreciate your
pleasure,
your presence and your contribution. Now, there was a comment earlier from a young referee here in Ireland, which I must confess I hadn't heard about, where he had to abandon a game. You seem to have a little bit more knowledge of this than I do. Can you elaborate on what you know?
Yeah, Mark Giles is mature in age, but learning the craft or relearning the craft of refereeing. And he was involved in very early in his career. He's been involved in a bit of a fracas with a particular club who were giving him a lot of verbals, which included threats, and then which resulted in one player throwing a bottle at him.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, he rightly decided to abandon the game. I think that clubs have to realize that referees are in this for enjoyment as much as they are as players. And there has to be a level of respect. The one thing that I really appreciate about this referee is a willingness to ask questions, to seek advice, to improve his refereeing standard. And it's pretty evident from the games that he's getting that he's on the upward trend in terms of officiating.
Yeah.
What he did do, and I think it's a reminder to all of us, he's clearly got a good memory. He took his time in writing a fairly lengthy but detailed report. Who was involved, the timings, what the actions were, how he was treated, all sufficient to be able to give information of which then the Federation or the Football Association, Irish Football Association could then review and act upon. And clearly what they've done is they've acted. And they've shown, the Federation have shown great support in protecting this referee. They've then brought in the league itself has handled the situation, and I think they've dealt with it pretty efficiently. However, in the FAI, if it goes to the next stage, then that would mean someone actually having to travel to go to an hearing at the FAI HQ. So it's just I think what it shows to me is that this has been dealt with pretty quickly, pretty efficiently by a referee, and it's not deterring him from wanting to continue refereeing. Good on him. And good on the FA or the league itself in dealing with this matter. And obviously the players being suspended, the clubs being fined, all those sort of things.
And they are pretty good at that here, Keith. Just for clarification, and I don't know why the two associations are so close with the way they're abbreviated. The FAI, the Football Association of Ireland, is the one in the south.
Yes.
The IFA is the one in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, let me just clarify. It is the FAI.
Yeah, Football Association of it. They're the ones here in the south. And they are pretty good at that. And I have to say, going way back when I started, before I got promoted to the senior level, I was in a league called the Amateur League.
Yes.
It was very, very well run, very well organized. The secretary of that league, who really had the power, was a guy called Noel Kennelly. And the referee's word, if you sent in a report, they literally didn't question you, because first of all, they knew the referees were honest, they were decent, they weren't going to tell lies. And if you sent in a report about an assault or an alleged assault, obviously, or intimidation of any description, they came down like a ton of bricks on on that club. And then the league to which that club was a member also came down hard on them. And then if it went further, so the player or players involved, they were on a loser right from the word go, because they would never tolerate that. And all of that, of course, is because they know that it's so hard not only to recruit referees, but to retain the ones they have.
Yes.
And they have to be seen to be showing support of match officials, and that clubs will not be allowed to get away with it. So I'm delighted Mark has done this, and I hope he's tuning in and that he'll send in a couple of comments.
Well, I think the positive bit is that he continues and will continue to referee. So it's not deterred him. And I think that's good. I think that referees have to recognise that the leagues that they're operating on will protect their referees. They will act. I think the important thing is he did the right thing in reporting a very detailed report that produced the pictures that are required for someone to make the appropriate decision. Sanction.
Yeah.
Very good.
A couple of dodgy inverted commas penalties over the weekend. The one with Arsenal where this trailing leg, and we had it, I was trying to wreck my brain to see when it was, a couple of weeks ago, where a player deliberately manufactured, maybe somebody out there listening can just remind us of what that one was a couple of weeks ago. Trailing leg, deliberately dragging the leg, manufacturing a penalty kick, and sadly getting it. I mean, I thought all penalty kicks went to VAR.
Well, so did I. And I think it calls into question the efficiency of the organisation by having colleagues officiating in the middle one day, VAR the next. Is there a dip in attention span? Or it's my mate that's made that decision. I'm not going to actually get involved. And they hide them behind what is a clear and obvious error.
Look, you think, Keith, they actually think that way? Like, my mate has made a decision, I'm not going to go against him. I mean, would they actually think that way?
I think there's too many decisions that are not acted upon.
Yeah.
When the referee has made a mistake and not been asked to check. So what we've effectively got, in my opinion, is we're actually deferring the decision to the VAR.
Yeah.
On many instances, whereas the VAR should
prove one way or the other, that the decision is right or not right.
Well, I mean, it was very clear. It was very obvious that the player who is running forward, if you've not seen it, is going forward at speed. He sees the goalkeeper coming out. He goes to ground because there's no chance of having a shot on goal. And then as he's elevating and falling and going forward at pace, he then sticks out a leg as though it's an anchor looking for a boulder to hook onto. But what he does, he hooks onto the goalkeeper down. He's already on his way down. It's not a penalty kick in a million years. And you then look and think, okay, I'll look at the referee. Maybe he's got a different view. But come on, VAR, come in. He didn't.
Yeah, and why doesn't VAR come in and recognise that?
I worry about VAR and how it's operating in the UK. I think that, we look at the Champions League and Europa and we see a pretty efficient operation of VAR. It's hardly interfering with the game. Yes, we do get a blip, but it's almost guaranteed that in our games, almost every game, we've got VAR controversy. I can dwell on the offsides. I mean, a week ago we saw Coventry City score what would have been the winning goal in the FA Cup semi-final, ruled out by a toe. And look, Errol, I know, having been involved in goal line technology, that the quality of the technology is not good enough to be able to give that level of decision-making accuracy. If it was, then why are the Premier League next year going to introduce the semi-automated system that has its own cameras and uses AI? I mean, it's and actually reduces the amount of time it takes by about 31 seconds on average to come to an offside decision. So it's not working. And anybody in the game who tries to justify the use of VAR at the moment, it's an hindrance to refereeing. It's not helping referees, in my opinion. And that is, I think, has to be down to, Howard's been in a year now. I think he's just got to get the grips. I think the IFAB need to understand it's not working around parts of the world. They've now got this silly thing. I think they're going to do it I think they're doing it in Australia at the moment, where they go to the edge of the pitch and they now communicate, I am awarding a penalty kick. Yeah.
They did that in the Women's World Cup, I think.
Yeah.
It was in Australia.
I'm thinking, like, look, boy, you pointed to the spot, penalty mark. You've indicated a television screen, just saying it's the process that needs to be understood and the fans' involvement. Engage the fans and trust them to be able to listen in to the whole dialogue that goes on between referee and VAR. And by the way, I listened in to Mic'd Up, the last program featuring Howard Webb and Michael Owen, and the discussion between referee and VAR is too matey, and it's confusing, and it's just not professional in its approach. You've got the referee talking through his decision, and he's played the ball. Well, he didn't play the ball, and as a consequence, VAR didn't come in, and Nottingham Forest were denied a very clear penalty kick against Everton, wasn't it?
Yes.
A week ago.
Yeah, it was a 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was on the radio this week, Keith, and I was asked, how is it, and Anthony Taylor particularly was mentioned, how is it that he has no problem with VAR, with refereeing in Europe, but he does have a problem with a similar type game in the Premier League?
Yeah, and same official acting as VAR. That's the crazy thing.
So are they? I try to put my psychologist hat on, and I'm trying to think, what are they thinking? Are they scared of the fans, of the clubs, of the managers, of the players, that they don't want to make that decision, and that they will always take the easy way out? The same with the pushing and shoving in the penalty area. There was one very, very blatant one. Was it on Friday night? It was a penalty as well.
Yes.
Where the player had his arms around the other, dragged him to the ground, but the referee still had to go to VAR. Still had to go to the pitch.
What is the difference? I think the difference is this. I think the actual difference is this. Having worked as a referee expert for UEFA and having helped write the referee convention, the UEFA, which is still in operation, UEFA give very clear leadership and direction. And I'll tell you the other thing, they also give levels of accountability. If you make a major error in a UEFA game, you're unlikely to get another UEFA game that season. So the concentration yes, the importance of the game is there, and I think it's complete focus. And I think Anthony Taylor is a different referee when he's in Europe than he is in
absolutely.
England. There's no question about that. And I look at him and I watch him in Europe and I go, "You're our number one referee." I look at Michael Oliver in the same way. He referees in Europe. He's on the ball. He's efficient, and you think, wow. He comes back, and his last couple of games in the Premier League have not been ones that would indicate that he's our number one referee, and I don't think he is at the moment.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. But it's just I've noticed that somebody was mentioning the other night with the Aston Villa game, the European game where they were beaten 4-2.
Yes.
And I think it was a Greek referee in that.
Yes.
But strong, decisive, assertive, authoritative, all of those things. Why can the English referees not do the same?
Well, I mean,
they do it in Europe, but they're not doing it at home.
Well, ultimately at the end of the day, this was Anthony Taylor's game was a semi-final European Champions League, which indicates that UEFA are more than impressed with him as an individual, as a referee. But I think in the past I've talked about the fact that when I left the PGMOL, we had a cadre of world-class match officials. There's no question. We were it was a cyclical thing, and I'd worked with them, and they operated very efficiently. Yeah, they did have the odd problem, but I kept them on the toes. Somebody gave me a Howard Webb book. I bought it. In fact, I bought it for $2.99 out of a charity shop this week, and I read a part of it, and he said that he didn't like the fact that I would take the decisions over the weekend. And where referees had made mistakes, they'd sit in that group and we would play those videos. And that referee who's made that mistake might squirm a bit, but we would discuss it. We would ask and inquire why that error had been made and how can we as referees avoid it in the future. And he's saying it was like going in and not being enjoyable. Well, it wasn't, if you're having a review by your boss, that's not an enjoyable occasion. You're on tenterhooks. If you're taking a driving test, you're nervous. And therefore, every week, what it did was it imposed pressure on them to not make the errors. And it actually was about keeping them focused and concentrated. But just to add a point here, because one of the things that I read 2 days ago is that the PGMOL have 14 people employed as analysts, pre and post match analysts. 14.
What are they analysing?
Well, they're analysing the teams before the referee's going to referee them and say, watch this guy, that guy, and do all that, presumably.
Yeah.
And look. A game of football is a piece of white canvas. And what your task is, when the trouble spots, the red paint starts coming, then that's when you've got to react. If that kettle is just boiling, you've got a finger on a pulse. It's a fairly competitive game. If it starts to steam, that's when your interventions are increased and your authority has to be underpinned in the way you talk. But, I look at some of the referees and they want to be matey with players.
Oh, Keith, I have a huge problem with that. That's why, I wrote a paper on refereeing in the 21st century. And I said that I would stop all this nonsense, this... shaking hands at the start of the game. Line up with the players, all right, but they want to shake hands. The match officials step back. You have to be seen to be separate and independent, and they're far too matey. You get it on the line as well. The assistant referee wants to make a conversation with the sub coming on.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
want to talk to the match officials.
No.
Why are they doing that? And even
No.
the players, when they go down injured and the referee's over to them, like the guy down is his son, and he's saying, "Are you all right there? You step back. Do you need attention?
Yeah.
Do you not need attention? Straightforward. Yes, I want attention. Call on the trainer. No,
Yeah.
I don't need attention. Step back." Why
Yeah.
do they want to engage in conversation with them? Oh, it drives me crazy.
Well, we see it, don't we? Again, that's a learning point for referees. Be professional, even if you're operating at the amateur level. Be professional and look after yourself. And by that, I mean, keep the conversation. Yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're a manager managing a game of football, managing an event. Keep your concentration, because I'll tell you this, players will chat to you. And the reason they're chatting to you is their mate, at some other point in the field of play, is having a punch or a kick or an argument with his opponent. Your job is to keep those players in view and not get too friendly with them.
Yeah.
But there's an over-friendliness, isn't there? Let's stay on the field of play at the end of the match so that everybody comes up and shakes my hand and, it's all great.
I watched Clement Turpin, the French guy, during the week.
Yeah.
He was excellent.
I know.
He was excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
John Moss moving to Scotland, possibly. Is this just to get on the IFAB board again? Like Mike Riley to Northern Ireland?
I was shocked when I saw this. I mean, he's been one of the key figures. Riley's right-hand man, the boss of the SG1. He was their manager, right? So he has to be responsible for some of the things that have gone on. It took Howard Webb a year to see how this guy was operating. And then obviously the PGMOL offloading. And I'm amazed. I mean, these guys that have got this job in Northern Ireland and Moss heading for Scotland, it's amazing. It shows to me that both associations have not done their due diligence correctly on both of them. And if Moss is appointed, well,
how do they get these jobs, though, Keith? I mean, do they have an agent or a rep or a
I think everybody lives on the point that the PGMOL is the senior organisation, certainly in UK, and look how well they're doing, and they're difficult. They tend to hide, don't they, behind the fact of, they're doing everything right. But the reality is, get real, they're not.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm just wondering how he got, and how Mike Riley happened to get down to Northern Ireland, so got that job. Then who did he replace, and why did they replace him?
Well, I think the guy who's been replaced in Scotland has resigned at the end of this season. I think the guy calls Campbell. He actually announced that he was leaving the role. Now, whether he's been pushed, I don't know. Probably he's had enough, because, look, the role is demanding. You've got managers to deal with, you've got club owners to deal with at times, you've got the leagues also, but that's the skill sets that's required. And I should have. When I saw that, I went, no.
I can't imagine the salary would be very high.
I think the salary is about 100K.
Yeah, so the obvious attraction then is that he would be on the IFAB board.
Yeah.
And same with Mike Riley, his salary. I mean, Northern Ireland football is worse than ours here.
Yeah.
And only half of our clubs are full-time professional.
Yeah.
So probably the same or less in Northern Ireland. So it's a part-time job.
Yeah.
But he's Riley obviously went there for the position of being on the IFAB board.
Yeah, I thought that, I got the impression that he would be there every day. but in reality, I am reliably informed that's not the case.
Okay, so it's a part-time position, really, is it?
Yeah, if it's a couple of days a week, I guess it is. Yeah.
It was interesting when it happened that Mark Clattenburg suddenly became an advisor to a club, Nottingham Forest, and now he has resigned, apparently.
Yes, he has. I can confirm that because I think he was hounded by the media generally, who couldn't see through this appointment. First of all, now let me say, I've advised clubs when they've contacted me, and I've actually got players off red cards when red cards have been issued incorrectly and law not applied. I think 3 of them have been around denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. That has been in a sort of non-paid advisory role because I like my credibility and I'm a referee's man in that sense. But I can say, look, this is the denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. The direction of the ball is not towards goal. The distance from goal is far too much. There's a defender. Or where the law as criteria has not been fulfilled, it's easy to say to a club, this is how your terminology should be when you're making an appeal. So the other side of it is that I used to also go into clubs on a regular basis and talk to the academy players and sometimes the first team players in terms of foul challenges, what's the difference between a careless, reckless, excessive force. So there's a learning environment in that. And I thought when I read that Mark was taking this role, this would be his key role. But in effect, what happened was there was the Everton, I think it was Everton Forest game, where there was cries for 3 penalty kicks. And the first 2 were subjective. And they were subjective that some referees would give them, others would not. One, I thought of those 2, a handball was deliberate and should have been penalised. The third one was absolutely nailed on. It was an absolute nailed on penalty kick. The player was brought down from behind and the referee signals to the VAR, the ball has been played. No, it has not. And it appears in Mic'd Up, this show where Howard appears and gives you an explanation and you listen to VAR, that because the referee had indicated he played the ball, the VAR stayed out of it. So the point is this: out of the 3 penalty kick decisions, 1 of them was nailed on, not given, and agreed, the PGMOL agreed that it was an incorrect call for the referee not to award that penalty kick. Mark Clattenburg went out and said the 3, he justified all 3 as penalty kicks, and he used the word, it's a joke. It's a joke that they're not getting the decisions. Now, my view was that as soon as I start to hear those comments in the media by the consultant, I'm thinking he's overstepped the mark and he's got involved here when he'd no need to get involved, because the communication between a club and the authorities is the club secretary and the authorities, either in writing or verbally, not suddenly another analyst, because you wouldn't expect occupants of the technical area other than the manager to generally comment and get involved. Occasionally they do, and when they do, they get a yellow card. So he was then put under a great deal of pressure. I think even Gary Neville had a go, and I think it was Gary Neville. Someone had a go anyway at him. And as a result, he's resigned that position.
And of course, he was only there because the owner of Nottingham Forest is this Greek guy whose name I can't pronounce, but Mark
Marinakis
was in Greece,
Yeah.
was he not? As
Yes,
head
he
of the-
was. So Mark obviously knows the guy who owns Nottingham Forest is also, I think, the chairman of the Greek Super League, of which Mark was for a period involved in managing the referees. I think the aim there ultimately is to have professional referees. So Mark was contracted in that situation to the Greek Super League. So I don't know what his current position is.
As a matter of interest, was he let go from that Greek Super League, or did he resign there as well?
I think that what you have in Greece is that it's not like the Premier League. It's like the old FA. The management of the referees and selection of the referees is done by the Football Association in Greece. And you know, when I went across to Greece, the guy who was actually doing the training and education was former Premier League referee Steve Bennett.
Oh yeah.
So he was doing it. He was working for the FA. I don't think he was working for the Super League.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just reading that the Man United game is on. They're at Crystal Palace, and by the way, Palace are leading 1-0 against Man United. But they were saying that Jared Gillett, who's refereeing it, might wear a body cam.
Yes, I've read that as well. I think the idea behind that is to actually, on this show mic'd up, give a view of the referee and what he is seeing. You know, when people explain these things, there is a lack of understanding of refereeing. A camera on the chest is a fixed dimension. The eyes and the head move.
Right.
And as a consequence, unless you've got a very wide angle, and I'm into photography, unless you've got a very wide angle, you are not going to see probably what you want to see. But they might find the odd clip to say, look, this is why this decision wasn't made. The reality is that, in a way, I've listened into Jared Gillett when he was in Australia, because we brought him across. You know, a guy called Ted Kearney was his coach in Brisbane. And I invited him across, and Ted came across with him and a number of other referees. He's very articulate. He's very well spoken. He speaks with great clarity, and I'm hoping that they might actually also have recording the voice and what he is saying, because I think that will show that you can actually manage players without being overly friendly, and you can be efficient in the language that you use. You know, I want an improvement in your performance.
Yeah.
Not next time you do that, you're going to get a yellow card because you're closing off your options. These are the things I think referees could learn from. But body cameras are in operation at various grassroots club referee levels now in certain league, and it's proven to be a deterrent, which I think is a good thing.
Keith, as always, many, many thanks for giving up your bank holiday Monday.
Pleasure.
Coming on the show. I really, really do appreciate it. And thank you out there for watching. And didn't get many comments tonight, but maybe the next time. Maybe everybody's on holiday because it is a bank holiday Monday, both here and in the UK. We'll do it all again next week, Keith.
Take care. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thanks.